Okay. And I have to admit to you, I cannot answer the confusion easily, but it seems best to understand this sort of confusion here rather than God goes, well, I changed my mind. Rather than, let me throw my thing out and then you can fix it, okay, Brad? Okay. That rather than God flitting from one idea to another about how to deal with this, is that God's forbidding to go and to curse Israel is the issue. God is not going to allow this to be the outcome of this. God is not going to allow a curse to come down. And so to allow Balaam to go on to Moab, it still required only speaking God's word. Yet Balaam is a known waffler. And that is the undercurrent that's sensing here. And that brought a severe reaction by God. And so he confronted this diviner along the road and interacted to change that mistaken behavior. And that's where the donkey enters the story. Brad.
Well, I will solve the problem for you.
Thank you.
I have a wonderful wife, and sometimes I say, I want to go do something.
Right.
Can I,
right.
That'd be okay? And she will, by her permission giving, she'll say, yes, I guess you can do that. Now, she's giving me permission to go, but when I go, she gets very angry. God's much the same way. He's basically saying you can go, but it's in a way that Balaam knows it's not what God has.
And I think that really is the issue here. And Karen has really helped us in so many respects so far. Okay, we avoided the BS thing, and now we've called this a donkey, and so far, so good. Thank you, Karen. So, will Balaam be allowed to curse Israel? Scene 3 answers that question. Third encounter. Who's Balaam, by the way? Just a quick review. He's a man of spiritual... Is he a man of spiritual integrity? Is Balaam a prophet for the highest price? A diviner on the take? Is Balaam a person who has such integrity and of such caliber that he can hang out with God? Because that's the way he sells himself. I'm a diviner. I'm tight with God. We learn here that Balaam, however, is blind. We learn that Balaam is in fact powerless in the face of larger powers. He can't see what a donkey can see. We learn that. He cannot see and he cannot understand the odd behavior of his lifelong or longtime companion, his donkey. I really think that line where the donkey said, have I been in the habit of doing stuff like this before? Are you so clueless that you think your only response to this is just to beat the snot out of me? I've had it. Wake up, open your eyes. And so you begin to see the unfolding of this story. And then the donkey talks. I want you to replay this story at least 2,000 years, probably 2,500 years. When this story was first heard, and about the time they get to this part where the donkey talks, everybody goes, what? So before you think you're so worldly, scientifically sophisticated, nobody who heard this first story said, oh, okay. Happens all the time. No, it does. It shocked them too. That's the shock of the story. But the real shock of the story is not a talking donkey. The real shock of the story is the lack of insights into these people that claim to have insight. I do know of a talking donkey. I have watched all the Shrek movies. So. And Eddie Murphy's good. Pick me! Pick me! I love that. So when the Israelites, they too were not familiar with talking donkeys. It was as unreal and it was astounding to them as it is us the first time we hear the story. So now the donkey endures 3 encounters with his boss. He endures a sword to the front and a beating stick to the rear. Balaam is confronted with God as a sword, and one that requires obedience. And to disobey in this story very clearly implies death. Balaam's donkey saved Balaam's life. Balak sees Balaam coming, and the king runs out to the border. And he said, "Took you long enough, but I'm sure glad you're here." And you can read the rest of the story, because I've got the meat of what I'm looking for. Is Balaam has learned everything from his donkey, and Balaam and Balak have learned everything from God. The answer to the question is, how do we learn things from God? Well, I still think that's a real hard question to ask. But just remember, God uses all sorts of different things to speak to us. And just like He used Balaam. But it was a donkey that gave Balaam lessons in what is stubborn and stupid and blind and clueless. A donkey. One of the things that I pray when and I know I've said this before, and I'll close on these words. Sometimes I get letters. And sometimes the letters are just wonderful. You know, real affirmation, real comfort. Dale, you're doing a great job. This really helped me when you did this. And let me tell you, I'm probably like the vast majority of you, I need those. And I'm good for them. You send me one of those, you know, I can, it reminds me of the movie Patton. You know, you give Patton a headline and he's good for another 50 miles. So, you know, I get one of those notes, I go, wow, that's great. And sometimes I get disturbing emails. And to be honest, I don't get too many of them. But when I do, they're not too delightful. But I started learning about 15 years ago or so. Not necessarily about the letter, but I've said, okay, Lord, this person is incensed enough they decide to write me this note. I'm not real happy about this, but where are you in the midst of that letter? How are you talking to me in the midst of this? What do I need to hear in the midst of this poison? And sometimes I need to hear it. Sometimes we need to hear from a donkey, because we're the ones that are blind and stubborn. And I think this story is at great risk of being lost as a kiddie story, a Bible story, when I think it has great depth to it.